Hello and welcome to my cake kitchen. My name is Gladys. Over here, I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate cake decorating easily. So there's a catalog of cake decorating tutorials right here on this channel. But in today's video, we're making a very simple blueberry loaf, blueberry bread, whatever you want to call it. And that is simply because I am taking you through the entire process of baking this loaf. I will be talking you through some of the techniques you need to understand so that you can get yourself a great bake when you try this at home. This loaf is going to be made from my very adaptable vanilla cake recipe. It is a recipe I developed myself and had tweaked it slightly that you can switch ingredients around without affecting the consistency or texture of the cake in its entirety. But I have added bits here and there to kind of bring the texture, mouthfeel, and zing to this blueberry muffin. I said blueberry muffin. We're not making muffins, we're making a loaf cake. So I'm gonna get my mixer right here. And the only reason I am using a stand mixer today is for convenience. But of course, you can make this exact cake using a hand mixer. And that's a little bit noisy, isn't it? So the only reason I am using a mixer today is for convenience and of course for quantity. But the same quantity can be made using a hand mixer. But if you're making larger quantities, a stand mixer comes in handy. I think I have a stand mixer review for an oak mat. This is a Kenwood. I love Kenwood. I have about 3 Kenwood mixers that I love to use. I have the Kenwood K Mix, I have the XL, and I have the KM330. But I also have an Oakma stand mixer that I bought. It is very affordable. I actually bought it for the reason that I wanted to review it and let any beginners know if they're looking for a mixer that is beginner friendly that they can use for themselves. So I'll link that up in the description box for you to use. But otherwise, let's get right into this bake. First of all, we have to preheat the oven. I have turned it up to 165 degrees C, which is about 325. Don't take my word for it. I'll leave more information about that in the description box for you. But outside of preheating the oven, we have caster sugar here, and in the caster sugar I have added the zest of 2 lemons, and the reason is that I am adding a bit of lemon flavor to this blueberry loaf just to bring a bit of zing and flavor to it. And adding the lemon zest to the sugar here allows the oils to infuse into the sugar and gives you a better flavor. So I am just going to let that mix for about a few minutes before we add in the butter. Now, the lemon zest is mixed into that, so I'm going to go ahead and add in some margarine. Now, I did say that this recipe is so adaptable. Look at me. Well, this is the reality of baking. Hopefully I don't edit this part out, but we're just going to add the margarine. I prefer the use of stork or flora for baking here, just so that it gives me a nice light fluffy texture. But if you want a bit of more flavor to your cake, you want to use butter, and you can swap the quantities of butter to margarine here and it will make no difference to the outcomes for you, except that you get better flavor and the crumb is tighter with using butter. But that is neither here nor there. I think that is down to preference. But over here I am using margarine. I just want to make that clear so that you understand the exact ingredients I am using in this bake. So if you're undertaking this bake in your own time, you will know what went into what and why we ended up with a certain bake. So I'm going to let that run. Normally I would encourage the creaming process to go for up to 6-7 minutes so that you have a lighter consistency to the mix. I'm not going to do this now. I'm going to probably let it mix for up to about just 4 minutes because I don't want to break the oil and sugar mix totally to a very light crumb, because when that happens it overfills the tin and the texture becomes too soft. There is room for adapting and picking up what flavor and preferences you like to your crumb, but for this I want a tighter crumb to the blueberry bread so that it's dense and still light on the tongue without that breaking completely. So I'm gonna mix that for just 4 minutes and I'll be back. The creaming has been done for 2 minutes. I realized I was started all of this doing all of that without my apron. So now we have the apron bar, which makes me feel like a right baker. Makes no difference, but for me, I think it makes a huge difference here. We've beaten this up to about 2.5 minutes, and I think by observation, this is the consistency I am looking for. I'm looking for the consistency of the sugar and margarine mix to look a little paler than it originally was, but without being too soft that it foils over. So with that, I'm just going to add some eggs into this. The original recipe requires 275 grams of eggs, but in this case, I'm just going to use 3 eggs. And try to break your eggs by itself before you add it into here, because there's also a risk that you might have eggshells. Ooh, my mouth is a little bit dry. I don't know why, so forgive me. So there are 2 eggs that have gone into the mix here, and I'm going to just mix it on medium high until the eggs incorporate in it. And then I'm going to add another egg in there. Now, I am also going to add a little bit of lemon extract here. So there are 3 eggs that have gone into it. So you're looking at about 160 to 165 grams of eggs here. That is assuming each egg weighs up to about 53 grams. So that's about 150 to 165 grams of eggs. Like I said, this recipe is so adaptable that you can raise the ingredient just by a few grams and it will make absolutely no difference to it, and you'll end up with great results for your bake. So our eggs are mixed in now, and I'm just going to scrape the bowl all in. And I used caster sugar here, but if you're stuck in a tight spot, you can use granulated sugar. The only difference is that sometimes the crumb of the granulated sugar, the use of granulated sugar leaves you a larger crumb as compared to caster sugar. But neither, those are just small things that by preference, depending on what you like better and do not want to compromise. But otherwise, having granulated sugar in here doesn't make a difference. For me, I find that when I've used granulated sugar in my baking, I'm so particular that it's very noticeable, because they granulated sugar, because the crumb doesn't settle, the sugar crystals doesn't settle completely. I tend to have browner crust, and the crust is rather the crumb is larger and a little less tighter, if you like, whereas caster sugar is a little more settled. I have a delicate crumb, and the browning is not so intense. But those are just small things that if you bake over time, you notice. But if you give some to a cake lover who is not particular about the small details of a cake, it makes absolutely no difference. So I say all that to say you can replace caster sugar with granulated sugar and you will absolutely get the same result. So we've done that, but all that talking, one thing I didn't do was oil. I don't know why I did that. But then again, I am adding 50 mils of vegetable oil here. The oil probably should have gone in before the eggs, but we'll see how that affects the result here for us in the end. Oil adds moisture to the cake, gives you a rather delicate crumb. So I want the crumb to be tight yet delicate, but without being voluminous. That is, if that's a thing. Anyway, so that's all done here, and I'm gonna go ahead and add in my flour. Over here, I am using self-raising flour. In the UK, self-raising flour means the flour has rising agent or leavening in it already. So all I have done is add a pinch of salt to that, and in my hand here is buttermilk. I love to add a bit of buttermilk to my baking because buttermilk tend to prevent or slow down gluten formation, which means it tenderizes the bake, giving me a great crumb. But in place of buttermilk, you can use milk and a touch of vinegar. Now, it will give you similar results, but they are not the same thing, I should say. With that added, all I'm going to do is turn this around and mix this in, and we'll see what we have here. Only me, or there's someone out there who doesn't like their cake batter to go to waste. This bugs me to no end. I would say I would sometimes even get the bits out with my hands, but I'm not going to be able to do that right now because I'm not going to be able to wash my hands well enough. So we have our butter here, which is homogeneously mixed here for us. So what I am going to do now is add a spoonful of flour into my blueberry here, and the blueberry has a squeeze of 1 lemon added. The reason being, I just wanted to add a bit of lemon flavor and some zing to it. So I've added the flour so that the blueberry, because it's heavy, doesn't sink to the bottom of the pan, if you like. So I've added a bit of flour in there so that it can form as glue to hold the butter. So what I'm going to do is pour a bit in there and add some blueberry in the middle, and then pour the rest of the butter in there. So you have something like a lemon and blueberry loaf here. So okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, let's see. Right. So I lined the pan. Okay. So I already went ahead and lined the pan with parchment paper, and we've almost filled it to the top. If you didn't have a liner in there, I would say you fill the tin to about 2/3 of the way up, leaving a gap for it to rise. But because I have the lips of the parchment paper here, that will hold the rise. So I'm going to put this in the oven. It should bake for anything between 55 minutes to an hour, 15 minutes. So I'm going to leave that to bake, but because we're on a live, what I didn't want to do was bake another one and bring it back, because I just wanted us to have a real feel and see the results of our bake. So this live is going to be over, and then right on the next one, I'll be back in an hour and 15 minutes or so that we can have a look into this properly.